Salve, sono Marcello di Cinewriting e vi do il benvenuto a questo nuovo episodio di Cinewriting Plays. In questa occasione giocheremo un po' The Stanley Parable, pubblicato da Galactic Café nel 2013. Presupporrò che non conosciate questo gioco, quindi magari spiegherò qualcosa man mano, non dirò nulla in anticipo, così chi non lo conosce potrà scoprirlo e magari volerlo provare. E cominciamo. Già questa schermata iniziale potete notare ha qualcosa di particolare.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Quindi, controlliamo il nostro caro Stanley. Dell'ufficio 427. Cosa ci ha detto la voce narrante? Stanley uscì dall'ufficio. Ok, seguiamolo.
Already this was uncomfortable, and Stanley decided that as soon as he found a new space he felt safe in, that he would never leave it again in his life.
Vecchio lungo questo ufficio, vero?
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Possiamo accontentarla oppure no. Facciamo così. Non ho una monetina, ho però un dado a 20 facce. Ora non potete vederlo, ma facciamo così: se esce pari seguiamo quel che ci dice il voce narrante, quindi andiamo a sinistra. Se invece esce dispari andiamo a destra, per sfizio. Ok, è caduto, non so dove. Ecco qua. Ed è 6, quindi pari. Facciamo quel che ci dice la Cinewriting. Davvero vuoto.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer
Prima di
there.
andare all'ufficio del boss, notiamo questo schermo su cui vengono proiettate diverse slide. Sì, è un gioco molto ironico.
Stanley just stood there doing nothing at all. He seems to think I have nothing better to do with my time than to sit around and describe every fascinating little detail of his inability to do anything. This is why Stanley and I are on such good terms.
L'occasione per farsi sentire. Ok, narratore, stiamo andando avanti, non ti preoccupare.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track. There was nothing here. No choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty broom closet. No reason to still be here. It was baffling that Stanley was still just sitting in the broom closet. He wasn't even doing anything. At least if there was something to interact with, he'd be justified in some way. As it is, he's literally just standing there doing sweet FA.
CTN puntato. Ok.
Are you really still in the broom closet? Standing around doing nothing? Why? Please offer me some explanation here. I'm genuinely confused.
Sto registrando un gameplay, mi sento attaccato, voce narrante. Ok?
You do realize there's no choice or anything in here, right? If I'd said Stanley walked past the broom closet, at least you would have had a reason for exploring it to find out. But it didn't even occur to me because literally this closet is of absolutely no significance to the story whatsoever. I never would have thought to mention it. Maybe to you this is somehow its own branching path. Maybe when you go talk about this with your friends you'll say, "Oh, did you get the broom closet ending? The broom closet ending was my favorite." I hope your friends find this
Ti
concerning.
prego.
Stanley was fat and ugly and really, really stupid.
La
He
voce
probably
narrante
only
era
got the
bellissima.
job because of a family connection. That's how stupid he is. That or with drug money. Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers. Well, I've come to a very definite conclusion about what's going on right now. You're dead. You got to this broom closet, explored it a bit, and were just about to leave because there's nothing here, when a physical malady of some sort shut down your central nervous system and you collapsed on the keyboard. Well, in a situation like this, the responsible thing is to alert someone nearby so as to ensure that your body is taken care of before it begins to decompose. Hello? Anyone who happens to be nearby? The person at this computer is dead. He or she has fallen prey to any number of your countless human physiological vulnerabilities. It's indicative of the long-term sustainability of your species. Please remove their corpse from the area and instruct another human to take their place at the computer, making sure they understand basic first-person video game mechanics and filling them in on the history of narrative tropes in video gaming. so that the irony and
Dai.
insightful commentary of this
Aspetta
game
abbastanza,
is not
cioè,
lost on them.
è stato molto
All right,
divertente.
when you've done that, just step out into the hallway. Ah, second player. It's good to have you on board. I guarantee you can't do any worse than the person who came before you. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Nah. Andiamo giù. Minaccioso.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job, All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay. Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Non ho commentato nulla perché la voce narrante era piuttosto ingombrante.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Bene.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Sì, è cambiato qualcosa a disposizione dell'ufficio. Quello era uno dei finali di The Stanley Parable. Eccoci qua.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Fanno a pezzi la quarta parete e lo trovo molto affascinante, ma l'elemento
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Hoping he might find coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
E mi dispiace sempre interrompere la voce, perciò mi fermo. E proprio il narratore è uno degli elementi secondo me più riusciti di questo gioco, che a conti fatti è semplicissimo nella struttura. Oh, si stava per bloccare, ok. Ed eccoci nell'ufficio del capo. Non si può entrare nel bagno. Ma è veramente interessante per le frasi che vengono dette dalla voce narrante, per il modo in cui lui gioca con style. Ci sentiamo noi giocati, siamo portati un po' a riflettere sulle nostre scelte, comunque sul medium videogioco, secondo me.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this. Stanley simply began entering random codes into the keypad, knowing full well the sheer statistical unlikelihood that this would ever result in a correct combination. If he knew that the combo was 2845, it would be another story entirely. But no, this is what he was going to do instead. Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the device was useless, since he could never possibly know that the combination was 2845.
Fare nervosi la voce in avanti è uno sport bellissimo. Ok, il fatto che sia rosso è inquietante. Fin dove possiamo farlo arrabbiare?
But it turns out that the panel's emergency override kicked in, and the door just opened all by itself. And Stanley got the hell along with the story. Well, whoop-de-doo.
Twist. Dove ci porterà questo ascensore nascosto nell'ufficio del capo dietro un codice numerico?
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Grande Stanley, ormai decidi per te stesso. Non segui le indicazioni di nessuno.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Lascio a voi il piacere di scoprire se un giorno avrete provare questo titolo, o magari in un prossimo episodio, cosa succede qui. Andiamo qua.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death. The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Oibo.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. So he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
"Farewell, Stanley," cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Oppure no.
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish? When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
Non ricordavo fosse in questo modo che si arrivava in questo luogo, perché ho giocato un po' di anni fa a questo titolo che mi appassionò tanto e in un paio di giorni lo divorrai abbastanza. E sì, è molto divertente l'intervento di una nuova voce narrante. E questo è una sorta di museo che ci mostra il gioco. Questa è la piantina. E ci vengono spiegati abbastanza nel dettaglio tutti quelli che sono stati le fasi di creazione. Il corridoio è stato modificato per fare in modo che il giocatore arrivasse alle due porte con un tempo congruo. Certo, essendo poi un videogioco, noi abbiamo sempre l'opzione di fermarci e di non seguire quello che ci dice il gioco. Quello è il fascino. Cioè, The Stanley Parable gioca su questo. Ops. Credits. Kevin Writing, voce narrante, spettacolare. Visitiamo un altro po' questo museo di The Stanley Parable. Ufficio del capo. Ma sì. Ok. Ok, queste sono delle clip audio della voce narrante che sono raccolte in questa
When Stanley came to mind, textbook mistake. It's the kind of thing you pick up on intuitively if you had even the most fundamental understanding of good and bad game design. But of course, being you, you'll probably spend the next 9 months.
Oh. Qualcosa. Un ending che non... No. Facciamo un altro piccolo giretto prima di arrivare all'uscita. Che sarà l'uscita davvero. E anche su questo che fa riflettere il gioco, quando la seconda voce narrante dice Stanley era già morto. Sembra quasi Kenny Guerrero. Narrator remains. Queste sono le mail mandate dai lettori alla voce narrante. Anche se avevamo inizialmente pianificato di utilizzare questi in ulteriori materiali promozionali, non abbiamo mai trovato il perfetto uso per loro. Ecco una selezione. È come il meme di DiCaprio fino a che vincesse l'Oscar. Ah no, ci sono, ok, sono stato trollato. Ok, non avevo proprio visto lo schermo. Allora no, ci sono le mail. Pensavo fosse una presa in giro. Are you a rock? No, scusa, no. How do you make a JRPG? Ok, Michael M. Divertente. Non pensavo fosse una presa in giro e che le mail non ci fossero. Ok, devo solo voltarmi dall'altra parte. More endings, fewer endings. È affascinante. Warzone. All'inizio dello sviluppo avevamo creato una ending in cui Stanley sarebbe finito su un campo di battaglia a combattere alieni. Questo action game sarebbe diventato senziente e avrebbe dichiarato guerra al narratore. Abbiamo realizzato poco dopo aver iniziato a crearlo che era un po' troppo scherzoso e avevo pensato che non valesse la pena, insomma. In più alcune persone hanno interpretato come fosse una presa in giro di persone a cui piacciono i shooter, che non è la nostra intenzione. Sarebbe stato particolare avere un finale del genere. Bene, qua siamo di nuovo. Ok, vabbè, facciamo prima fare così e usciamo. Ehi, no, vabbè. Countdown. Uff, ok. Exit. Sarà davvero uscita?
Oh, look at these two. How they wish to destroy one another. How they wish to control one another. How they both wish to be free.
Lo switch di The Stanley Parable. L'unico modo per sfuggire alla voce narrante e alla prigionia è forse spegnere il gioco. In questo modo ci saremmo liberati, avremmo fatto una scelta. Tuttavia il fatto che esista anche questo bottone che ci venga proposto non è comunque un suggerimento, un'indicazione che stiamo seguendo qualcun altro. Potremmo anche stare qui fermi. C'è il museo con varie cose interessanti. La seconda voce narrante non sembra più volersi far sentire per adesso. La prima, il nostro narratore principale, non sappiamo che fine abbia fatto. Ci resta quest'ultima leva che adesso premeremo. Cosa succederà? Si spegnerà tutto, crasherà il PC ed esploderà, e quindi questo video non uscirà. Andiamo.
Can you see? Can you see how much they need one another? No, perhaps not. Sometimes these things cannot be seen. But listen to me. You can still save these two. You can stop the program before they both fail. Push escape and press quit. There's no other way to beat this game. As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now and it'll be your only true choice. Whatever you do, choose it. Don't let time for you. Don't let time...
Ops. Ancora una volta. Addio, Stanley. Ed eccoci a un altro finale. Ok, lo schermo è nero. Non sta succedendo altro. Non ricordo se ci siano altri commenti di voci narranti o altro, oppure se probabilmente era intenzionale questo schermo nero perché ti obbliga a ricominciare oppure a tornare al menu, come ti veniva anche suggerito dalla seconda voce narrante. Eccoci qua. E siamo tornati alla schermata iniziale. Dunque, restano diversi misteri. Intenzionalmente non ho preso dei percorsi anche perché avrebbe richiesto un po' di tempo. Volevo giusto dare un assaggio della particolarità di questo gioco. Secondo me è molto carino da recuperare e ci sono altri finali molto interessanti che non ho toccato, incluso quello tra virgolette principale, che si ottiene seguendo tutte le indicazioni della voce narrante, ma ce ne sono anche altri molto bellini. E questo gioco gira su, credo, diversi PC e configurazioni, non richiede grandi risorse e personalmente lo consiglio. Secondo me è molto divertente e le voci narranti sono splendide. Adoro le voci narranti in un gioco, penso anche a Transistor o a Bastion, e danno un'ulteriore dimensione al titolo, in questo caso una dimensione metanarrativa, perché questo gioco riflette su se stesso. Sono alcune riflessioni che possiamo vedere ad esempio anche in titoli come Metal Gear Solid 2. Secondo me è molto interessante, quindi consiglio di recuperarlo. Si trova su Steam e spero che questo episodio vi sia piaciuto e non dovete dispiacervi per Stanley, perché se io dovessi premere avvia il gioco lui starebbe benissimo, di nuovo vivo e vegeto e in possesso di tutte le sue facoltà decisionali che gli permettono di scegliere ciò che lui vuole, o forse no, o quel che noi vogliamo. Siamo un po' Stanley noi? Questo è un bel dubbio. Grazie per aver visto questo video e alla prossima. Continuate a seguirci su Cinewriting e sui social e su questo canale YouTube. Ciao!